Hi, welcome to another episode of Hope, hearing other people's experiences. I'm so happy to introduce my guest today. It is the lovely Pax, and he is a very inspirational person to me, and I think probably to you as well. So I'm just going to shut up and let him talk. Hi, Pax. Would you be so kind as to tell us your story?
Hi, Georgina. Thank you for asking me to come in and be part of this. And a little bit about my story. Oh, it's been a journey. It has been a journey to actually get recovery and to maintain recovery. And there's been a lot of ups and downs, not understanding what was really going on within me. But where I'm going to end up starting, and I usually just allow the inspiration to fly through me anyway. And, by coming into recovery, I've kind of understood what the actual illness of addiction is about through going, from my experience itself. And I can trace back, certain characteristics that I had as a child. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really understand that those things were actually a part of an addiction. And when I've come into recovery, I've come to understand, that there's a three words where it says restless, irritable, discontent. Okay. Now, I know, and I recall, I was restless, irritable, discontent from a very young child. Mm-hmm. I couldn't sit still. It's like, I've always had to do something. There's kind of a thing where there's something missing. And my eyes were always looking on the outside, and my first addiction would be working. Mm. Now, believe it or not, I was 8 years old and I'm working. I'm jumping on the back of a milk float, delivering milk. Why am I doing that? It's because I get a bit of money and I can go and buy certain things and so on, so that I can, maybe give to the other kids, get their liking, their approvals, and also looking at it, where I'm not able to get it, and my eyes are looking at other kids having stuff, so I started to, that's one of the first things, But also with that, I must emphasize that, I have always had this thing, and I bring it into where I am in recovery, and that is that I simply don't know how to follow instructions that were given to me, When someone used to say, go right, I'm going left. Mm-hmm. Used to say, go left, I'm going right. There was instructions about, I really remember this is, back in those days, I'm talking the 80s, early 80s, mid 80s, fireworks were available. Mm-hmm. And, the instructions are, don't go back to the firework, and, I remember this very clear. Is that there was a firework and it didn't go off. It didn't provide the magical thing that was coming out of it. And clearly, don't go back to it. But I had to go there and say, and it actually blew up in my face. And I'm very blessed that actually I didn't lose my eyes. But that kind of stuff and the actions of just being rebellious didn't stop. It just continued. It just manifested in different ways. And so as I was growing, still having this sense of feeling that there's something not right internally, but constantly looking externally. Mm-hmm. So that was achievements, making sure that I was okay looking on the outside. I found that karate and all sorts of other things that I used to kind of believe. It's just that it's for me to be involved in society and having this kind of sense of fear within, and in this place where that low self-esteem but I also believe, you know, by coming into recovery, is that those low self-esteems were actually created by myself. And I didn't realize that I was actually doing them. You know, dishonesty was very, very clear, you know, and it's petty, it's simple stuff. You know, I remember going to temples, and, you know, that was my safe haven, you know, because I knew that I was not going to get into trouble, you know. And I'm in that place. So that used to be my hiding out place. But I used to kind of go in, you know, they used to have donation boxes. Put 10 pence in and, no, put 2 pence in and take 10 pence out. Right? And it was very innocent kind of thing. But the thing why I was doing that is that I wanted to go and buy some sweets and stuff. And also take the other kids with me, you know, and then get their approval. So they all like me, they want to be around me. And I've got into trouble, you know, being caught. But yet, did that stop me? No, it did not, you know, because the drive from internally that I wanted to change what was going on, the consequences didn't come into my mind. Is to do it again, you know. And so I can see those behaviors, you know, they were actually there when I was as a child. And then, you know, as I was growing up, you know, yeah, perspective does change. And then, you know, still having this kind of major shyness going on. But it's, today I understand it's fear, you know. But the way I like to look at it is ego-fired fear. Because my mind's racing. You know, it's constantly worrying about what other people are thinking of me and all that kind of stuff. You know, am I going to be accepted? You know, am I going to be worthy enough to be around certain sets of people? So the whole thing was kind of, you know, really confusing in my own mind. Now, I'm going to go a little more into the addiction aspect of things. You know, where, you know, I remember having my first ever drink, you know, and alcohol was one of the main and primary substance that I used. I've dabbled into a lot of other stuff, but it was kind of, you know, where the consciousness came in, and I would say I can stop that, and I would continue on to the other. But also, you know, there was parallels of workaholism and the drinking, all the successes and it was balanced, and actually women was part of it as well. See, because what I'm trying to do is to actually get these external things to change the way I am and change the way I feel about myself, and then I'm alive. And so I remember very, very clearly when I had my first drink, and I was this fearful guy, you know, completely self-obsessed. Am I dressed okay? What's people going to think of me? You know, how am I going to communicate and talk to people? So I'm just really closed. And then I had a few drinks and a few more. And the next thing is that I was rolling around on a dance floor with my shirt off, and I didn't care less what people thought of me. You know, so, you know, alcohol had an effect on me, and I actually drank for the effect, you know, and I also create the illusion that drinking and, you know, and associate it as that's how you have fun in life. That's, you know, but it was an illusion, because what it was doing for me was the undercurrent stuff. You know, it blotted out the fear, it blotted out, you know, the kind of that mind which was racing, and it calmed it all down and gave me the illusion that I had freedom. And whilst it gives me the illusion of freedom, I feel in control, you know. And I would say, you know, and I like to refer it as a misguided spiritual experience.
Oh, interesting.
Right. And I know you can go further into it, you know. I know there's been studies in the whole thing about, you know, I think Carl Jung was, you know, created a letter and said, you know, it's just a low-level thirst for some kind of a spiritual experience, or, you know, and I'm not going to go too much into it because I'll be paraphrasing the whole thing.
But it's an interesting concept for sure, that because I remember my first drink, and it felt like I didn't know what a spiritual experience was, but whatever it was pretty close. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So, and so having that it was like a misguided spiritual experience, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was embedded into my mind. That this substance changed the way I felt, and I was able to start communicating with people, and actually, it kind of set that kind of thing where, in recovery, there's so many promises that come out of literatures and different types of literatures, but it did give me that sense of I was in control, provided me, the thing that I've just found something, which is the solution for life and how to live life and how to function in life, with a medication, which is alcohol. And I didn't know it at the time that this was all happening, but it was happening. I can kind of refer it, I can really remember all the stuff that was going on. So what I've really found is that I found God in a bottle.
Yeah.
And I've always drank for the effect, for what alcohol does for me.
Yeah.
When it provides me that false sense of freedom, and I'll be alive, and I'll be able to communicate with people. Because of what alcohol does to me, it creates the illusion that I'm having fun. This is what life's about, the enjoyments, because of the freedom I get. To go on with that, is that I came to rely on alcohol over time, and the progression of it grew and grew and grew. Now, but along that journey, I've had great successes.
Was there a time where it was okay?
No.
Consequences.
The answer is it was not okay from the off-go.
Right.
It was my experience that I had that provided me to keep chasing it. And to be brutally honest, I should have been in recovery on the first drink. That's the truth, However, I'm not going to let go of something which is going to become magical within me, and allowed me to be just free. So the consequences, the major consequences, weren't there for me to be kind of convinced that I should not go near this. Even though I kind of vomited out. I mean, alcohol is a poison, the body will reject it. But for me, I wanted more. And even if I vomited it out, because I'm fixed to the substance of what it's doing for me, the effect that it actually is. And I love how literature and it kind of goes into it. Says men and women essentially drink for the effect produced by alcohol, and the sensation is so elusive, whilst they admit it's injurious. So the consequences does come. They cannot, after a time, differentiate between the truth and the false. And to me, that really kind of brings my progression into alcoholism, into the grips of alcoholism, where the reliance of alcohol grew, the consequences growing. I don't really like to talk about the consequences in graphic detail, because the consequences are not what makes me an alcoholic. I understand that today. The consequences were really signs for me to take on board that I'm actually going down the wrong path. However, I've got a very, very magical mind, which is I call my ego. And it loves to rationalize and justify everything, And, there's three words that I've really got to work hard on. One is rationalize, and it's got lies on the end. It's lies.
Oh.
And then the other one's minimalize. It's got lies on the end. It's lies. And the other thing is analyze. It's got lies on the end. It's lies. And I use those to convince myself that there's nothing wrong.
Wow.
You know, and creating the delusion within me there is nothing wrong. The belief that I have, you know, so the consequences were growing, you know, whether it was relationships breakdown, you know, car crashes, you know, losing friends, you know, decline in performance of work and all sorts of things. And I'm going to tap into you know, one or two of amazing rationalizations that, you know, which I look at it today as insanity.
Yeah.
You know, and I say that is because if I'm lying to myself, then that's just insane.
Yeah.
You know, and because it's not like I'm trying to get out of an awkward situation, you know, if I'm just, I don't want to talk to you, and so I want to get away. But to lie to oneself, to convince oneself, is a form of insanity in itself, you know. And where I remember one time where you know, I had a car crash. You know, I'm very, very blessed that I'm still alive. You know, after that, but it amazed me. You know, I come to the next day, and I've got this mind saying, "Did that really happen yesterday?" And I'm looking out to see if my car's there, and the car wasn't there. And I went up the road, and I found the car, and I saw it was a wreck. You know, and I just don't know how I managed to kind of get home that day. One thought is that, you know, what's happened, but the second thought is I was on the whiskey. Now, if I was on the beer, this clearly wouldn't have happened. You know, so I'm convincing myself that whiskey's now the problem and beer is okay, but still holding on to it, that both of them are still alcohol, you know. And so I go on to a journey where, you know, I'm not going to drink whiskey anymore because that's when I'm really wrecked, okay? So beer is okay. So I've just convinced myself that there's nothing wrong with beer, you know. But that's just mad, you know.
I'm laughing because I recognise it in me.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, so I can go on with this kind of actions and behaviour, rationalising and justifying actions and behaviours. You know, missing time for work. Well, you know what? I've got stomach ache, you know. I'm convincing myself.
Yeah.
You know, I've got other people doing the work, you know. I had a very successful business background, by the way. You know, but the whole kind of thing just started to collapse as my progression of intake of alcohol was increased to the point where I may have had it, you know, over a weekend period to becoming a daily drinker without even realizing. And it was very subtle. The progression was very subtle. So my reliance became a lot more. And I remember I even owned a pub.
What?
And I did, yeah. And it's crazy. It was a very, very seedy, you know, it was like very dark and dingy place, and it needed a lot of work in this place. And I used to kind of, you know, a lot of people didn't used to go there, and I used to say, well, you know, let me go there to support the business. You know, the guys need customers. You know, otherwise they're not going to be able to cover their wages and so on. So, you know, I'm being a nice guy now.
Well, how nice.
You know,
yeah.
You know, to go in there, just give them a bit of support, encouragement. But clearly, I'm going there to drink. You know, I need an excuse.
The mind is so powerful, though.
Absolutely. You know, I've got a girlfriend. And she goes, you're not spending enough time with me. Well, you know what? A business has to come. You know, I've got to entertain the clients. It's amazing what my mind really can do and gravitate towards alcohol. It's because without realizing, it became a need.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't function really without it. And I'll be very dishonest in how I'm replying to people. And, you know, coming up with stories like excuses.
Yeah.
And again, all those things create the narrative within me. There's actually nothing wrong. And, you know, I'm going to fast track, you know, where, you know, I landed myself into treatment. And it wasn't by choice I went into treatment. Actually, people around me can see that I'm going into a downward spiral. And I was convinced there's absolutely nothing wrong with my drinking, you know. I can blame health conditions for it. Well, I'm just going through, I used to have Crohn's and, well, it's the Crohn's, so that's why I'm lying in bed, but I've got a bottle of Jack Daniels sitting next to me as well.
Yeah, we'll tell ourselves anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. So people can see that I'm declining, and I was oblivious to it. So I've got thrown into a treatment center by a family members and an ex-girlfriend. Now, I've come to in this treatment center now, and realized where I was. Few things were very, very powerful within me. One, my ego, my arrogance, and my ego was off the charts. Pride was off the charts, and I was delusional. I really believed there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. And the first thing I wanted to do is get onto the phone with family members and say, "You're all mad. You need to be in a psychiatric hospital. I'm okay.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with me." And I believed it to my core.
Yeah.
So, when people are saying this, you're messed up. I'm in this mindset, well, there's nothing wrong with me. Why are you, and I'm trying to blame others.
So you're defensive.
But it's also, I'm running off my belief. The actual definition of delusional in a dictionary, where it really is, it's idiosyncratic beliefs, where reality is being contradicted, and I still believe it, even I see the evidence.
Dream world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in a treatment center, a psychiatric hospital, one over the cuckoo's nest, and I'm saying I'm actually okay.
Yeah. No, I've been there. I know that one.
Right. So, I just thought, okay, I need to get people off my back. Right?
Yeah.
And I really said, I'll sit this out for a couple of weeks, because my mind is very powerful. It's using information from so many different areas of my life, how success of businesses, how I've conducted my life, and how beautifully nice and, helpful I am. And it's using all this information to convince me that actually I'll just sit out for 2 weeks and I'll apply my intellect into this recovery thing, and I'll be okay, and I left that treatment center. Do you know what? Within 24 hours, I found myself drinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just couldn't understand what was going really on. And I thought it was willpower. I've got great willpower in different areas of my life, where I've been. And today I really do understand it's even those other successes and all the other things were ego-fueled accomplishments just to cover up what was really going on in my life.
Ego-fueled accomplishments. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, because then if I'm getting all these ticks done, then I'm okay.
Absolutely.
I'm a good person. Look at my resume.
Right. So it's creating the belief within me that there's nothing wrong in my life, and actually I'm already in a downward spiral. I went into a journey of 2 years, 8 treatment centers. All the therapy one can imagine. I've had it all.
Yeah.
Geographicals, international, brain surgeons, you name it, I've done it.
Brain surgeon.
Oh, it's a hilarious story, actually. I really believed I was smart than everybody else. And, I'm sitting in a treatment center and they're saying, "You've got an illness that centers in your mind." And I'm thinking, but these guys are, they're working on programs and all this and therapies. And I'm thinking, why are they wasting their time? Just get a brain surgeon to sort the problem out.
Never heard that one.
Right.
Never.
So, I didn't say nothing. I just thought, after I just thought, let me go and grab a one. And I went off to India for a trip because I had to get away from London.
Yeah.
London's the issue.
Yeah.
The business is the issue. The girlfriend's the issue. And I'm pointing fingers, 3 fingers pointing always back at me. I'm the issue. And what was going on inside me? So I went off to a brain surgeon and, my ego was off the charts too. It just amazes me these things. It's just hilarious. I look back at it, I can only laugh at them.
What else can you do?
It's like, I'm employing a couple of guys, consultants and so, to give me their professional opinion of what's wrong with me. They come back and bring the scans, and they go, "There's absolutely nothing wrong with you." And I'm saying, "You're all mad."
The brain surgeon is mad.
Right. I have no idea, what a brain surgeon does. I have no qualifications.
Just fix
but
me.
I know that you guys are mad and you're just robbing me.
Yeah.
It's just mad. It's insanity. And,
Wow.
and I followed through from there. I didn't get the answer I wanted. Mm-hmm. So I did go to an ENT doctor, and I had a nasal issue. And the ENT doctor said, "You've got a deviated septum." And I go, "What does that do?" The guy goes, "Well, you're not getting enough oxygen one side." And, my mind wants to blame or find something that's wrong and defective. So that becomes the issue. And my mind went, that's why I can't stop drinking. It's because my right side of the brain is not getting enough oxygen. It's the left side of the brain. So if I do the operation, it'll be equal and everything will be great and I'll be able to carry on with my life.
The end.
I had the operation, surprise, surprise. Guess what? I picked up a drink. I had no understanding and driven with this delusion, that I will be able to stop. I'll be able to do it and apply my will into the whole thing. Nothing worked. The only thing that really happened was, my world became small.
Yeah.
The people don't want to be around me. Business was gone. The families, I've had enough. And I'm constantly in this place where I'm just deteriorating.
Was there a wife and kids at this point?
No.
No. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's still
there wasn't.
deterioration.
I've never been married, by the way.
Oh, okay.
I do have a son.
Yes, I know. I know that bit. Yeah.
So, it got to a place where my world got small, and I had this belief that I was a nice guy. I don't do nothing wrong. But
It's
in the
somebody else's
midst-
fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the midst of the progression and in the rationalizing and the justifying and convincing myself that I'm great and I just don't do any harm.
Yeah.
Actually, the reality was that I was causing havoc around me. A lot of pain was getting filtered out. It's the ripple effects, where a pebble gets dropped and the ripples flow.
Yeah.
So everybody around me was really getting affected, and family members, friends, disassociation from friends.
Painful.
Absolutely, to a place where I'm sitting in a room with a bottle in hand.
Yeah.
Very lonely.
Yeah.
But guess what? I've got my bottle, my best friend, and I don't need nobody. It's just it's that self-piteous place where
I know.
Anyway, it gets to the point where my hands actually went up to open, and I like to call it was a spiritual cry. And the reason why I say it's a spiritual cry, it went beyond my intellect, where my best thinking always got me into trouble. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I relied on my ego to keep me navigating through life. Whether it's being able to kind of function, it was just mad. But I functioned on it, and I tried to apply my recovery with my ego, and none of it worked.
Your way.
Absolutely, and one thing is important. I was guided to go into a recovery program and 12-step programs from the off-go. But again, my pride, my arrogance, my ego was just blocking me.
Likewise.
From it. It's like, no, I'll sort this out. I'll do this.
That's for them, not me.
Yeah. But also, it's that, pride is very big. I've come to really understand, it's like, it actually blocks me from saying, I need help. Mm.
Yeah.
I'll come up with some narratives and simply say, I don't want to, burden other people with my troubles. You know, I don't want to waste other people's time. It's just pride.
Yeah.
Just blocking me, you know, where
I don't want to
can't-
look weak.
I just can't say, you know, I am really messed up and I need help. You know, so it gets to that point where, you know, my hands did go up.
So what was the moment when you genuinely had enough?
That was when my hands went up and I was in a room, blacked out curtains with bottle in hand. And as I said, there was for me, there was this cry that came out. And I like to call it a spiritual cry because it went beyond my intellect, where I said, I can't do this anymore, you know. And my world has got so small, I had nowhere else to go. And I actually walked into recovery programs and 12-step groups. And I started to engage with what people were talking about, you know, of what recovery requires. You know, I became teachable. You know, I started to listen to what was going on. But I had to get to that brokenness first for me to even get there, you know. And so, you know, I started to engage in the program. People said, get on to, you know, keep going to recovery meetings, keep going to, you know, be around people who are in recovery so you can, you know, be around people who can support you and you'll be able to kind of, you know, help each other out. You know, getting a sponsor to actually help with, you know, giving healthy suggestions, you know, working a program and actually going through a 12-step program to actually, you know, to get through that 12-step program, to have tools on to how to live and function in a day.
It's invaluable. It's,
you know, but also it was designed for me to actually tap into a power greater myself as well, you know, and you know, I started to engage and started to do what I was asked to do, you know, and I was amazed. I was actually amazed that one day at a time I was not drinking, you know, and, you know, I tried in every imaginable way with my will, you know, self-knowledge, self-reliance, none of it worked. And it sounds as soon as I've started to be around in recovery and engage in it, I've already tapped into a power greater than myself because I'm actually needing help. And I started to kind of engage in the program and do the whole program. Went through it, going through that whole process of actually starting to rebuild my life because it got to a place where it was a wreck, you know, and I've got to start repairing those bridges that I smashed with relationships and so and so that I've, you know, destroyed. And I started to do all those things. And again, you know, it was one day at a time. I'm not drinking. You know, I'm pretty amazed. You know, my life started to evolve. You know, I've started to become kind of useful. You know, and I lost a business, you know, through the madness. And I thought, you know, let me start another one. And I did. I started a new business in recovery. And you know, that started to fly. You know, I had a new partner in recovery. You know, things started to look glossy on the outside. You know, I'm being respected back, you know, within my friends and so on, so family members. Things started to change. You know, the key, what I would say is that without realizing, you know, and it was very subtle, okay, the business started to become more important in my recovery. You know, the family affair, you know, gatherings and, you know, weddings, whatever it is, those things started to become more important in my recovery. The new partner became more important in my recovery. But alongside that, you know, I also kind of confused what happiness is really about. Okay? I thought, you know, I still had this delusional belief that it's about the glitz and the glam, you know, all the externals. And I was still chasing it, you know, the money, You know, the cars, the houses, the partner, all those outside of me. And I didn't even realize I was doing it, but those things became more important in my recovery, you know. And recovery's always been, where I need to grow spiritually, okay, to kind of maintain recovery.
Yeah.
And actually, I was growing materialistically.
Easily done.
Absolutely. I've got an ego which rationalizes and justifies exactly what's important for me. And so, I've gone in this pathway, and I used to rationalize and convince myself what I was doing in recovery as well, I used to go to a few meetings and put a few chairs out and say, yeah, I've been to a couple of meetings, and I'm doing my bit to help others. But the reality was that I was just, deceiving myself from the real truth. Actually, other things were more important. Where I actually placed my time was on what I still needed. I was still in this very selfish, self-centered place where, I need to worry about what I need first, and then I'll start helping and doing altruistic work and helping others. Once I'm sorted, it'll be okay. Now, by doing all this, I really didn't grasp the power of this illness. And the illness which I have is alcoholism, which centers in my mind. It's very cunning, very baffling, and very powerful. And it lies in my ego, where it's constantly driving me to do certain things and thinking that this is the correct way. I speak about this stuff is because as I was drifting away from my recovery program, without even realizing, an event happened in my life, and I said I was not spiritually armed to deal with it, and the event can be anything, as far as I'm concerned, and it's irrelevant really, and the reason why I say it's irrelevant in any emotional challenging event, and the result would have been the same, So it's like, I'm very good at pointing fingers and saying, that was the issue, why, and so and so. And there's always going to be three fingers pointing straight back at me, and as I said, the event happened, and I found myself closing down and in this very self-piteous place, the victim kind of place. And, I got to a mental state where I wanted to check out this world. I didn't want to be alive.
I know that one.
And, I actually drank after 4.5 years again. Now, I didn't drink just because, the externals were great. The externals were great. I had the glitz. But it was what was going on inside was actually broken.
Pain.
Yeah. And the only thing that I know that gives me that sense of ease and comfort is to have a drink. Now, the problem with me picking up a drink is that I'm an alcoholic, and I get to understand that once I start, I will set off that phenomenal craving, and I will not be able to stop, because my body will start demanding more and more of the same thing, And then once I'm not drinking, life and how I function in life, my spiritual well-being, it becomes the issue, I'm still having that kind of spiritual angst within me that I don't know how to kind of fix or how to kind of manage, and, it's described as restless, irritable discontent, I can enlarge it in so many different ways, where, I just don't know how to handle my emotional natures, I'm getting to this place where I don't know how to function anymore, and I picked up a drink, and I was off to just really check out this world. And I found myself on the streets of London, with bottle in hand, no care in the world, personal hygiene out the window. Because once I've got my substance, my mind's just completely blotted out of all my worries and what's going on. And I'm focused on the drink, and I'm not going to be able to stop because it's numbing me, It's numbing what's going on internally, the pain.
So you were homeless?
I became homeless, and it was a period of 3 months, and I found myself on the streets of London homeless with bottle in hand, no care in the world, and I managed to get frostbite, through the cold weathers. And again, I'm not realizing what's going on. And by getting frostbite, I've had, I got admitted into hospital and I've had both legs amputated because of it, and so my world was really turned upside down.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, my mental, my spiritual, my physical was just absolutely destroyed.
Were you aware of what was going on?
At what stage?
Like, you come to in hospital, I'm guessing. Did you know that they were planning to amputate, or
oh yeah, no.
They discussed it with you?
Yeah, it was all
okay.
discussed.
Okay, because I know what you're talking about with the like checking out, completely gone. This is the bottle, this is my life. And so I've woken up in places where I don't know where I am. And so I was just wondering, like, if you knew what was happening.
Yeah, no. I was given guidance by the consultants and the medical teams all put together. I saw the reality of what was really going on.
Right. Okay.
It's actually great, when you got beautiful, health service where they kind of start to detox you, and then there's some level of thinking that really occurs. And I was given a choice, really, and it was not a choice. My legs were in such a bad state. They've gone gangrenous by this stage, and the consultants came and they tried to use blood thinners to open up vessels, which was unsuccessful. And the words were from the consultant's mouth was, we can still try and carry on doing the blood thinners because it hasn't worked so far. However, if the infection spreads to your heart, lungs, or brain, you're going to be dead.
Yeah.
And the other is to amputate. It's not a choice, But I had another spiritual cry that came out from me that day, and it was instantaneous. And the words were just amputate, I didn't discuss it with nobody. But I just knew inside that was the correct. Now, I say that is because my mindset at one level was I didn't want to be in this world. And there was a cry within me that came out and just said, amputate, And I've gone through the whole procedure, and my world was completely turned upside down, how I functioned, and everything was just stripped away of me. And I found myself as spiritually, mentally, and physically absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
It's again, trying to come to terms with all of that. It was not easy, and having family members come, just there's no need for words. It's just the look on people's faces was enough.
Yeah, it's just that would be a great excuse for, like, if that happened to me and I was drinking at the time, that would be a great excuse to continue drinking.
Let me get there.
Yes, I want to hear this bit.
Now, one would have imagined that having both legs amputated would actually stop me from drinking. That didn't stop me.
No.
Okay. It's not like I can't physically see what has happened. I'm sitting on a wheelchair, both legs amputated, and I'm having all this angst within me, the guilt, the shame, the remorse, the fear of what's going to happen. And my internal worlds, my mind's going crazy. And the only thing I want to do is go and pick up a drink while I was in hospital. And guess what? I did.
Really? No, I'm not surprised.
So it kind of shows me I had no mental defense against that first drink.
No.
Nothing of my, mind would prevent me from actually picking that drink up.
Well, the consequences didn't prevent you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But because it's what the substance is doing for me.
Yeah.
And, it was insane. But also, I may have not had a mental defense against that first drink, right? I didn't even have a spiritual defense against that first drink. Where I can tap into something else, where it's not coming from my mind.
Yeah.
And, I was drip fed, hope. And this whole thing is about hope.
Yes.
Where, I had people coming over to my hospital bed, where I've kind of connected with as my journey's in recovery. And I like to call, to their family to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was these people who had the understanding, okay, of despair, loneliness, brokenness, but also they come with compassion, kindness, love.
Understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Empathizing. They may not be able to relate, but they can empathize in the brokenness.
Yeah.
And it was these people who were carrying that message to me by simply saying, things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
Not, it wasn't rocket science of information. It was just simplicity, and it was just a message of hope, and I knew the answer for me to get well lied in my recovery and in the spiritual growth of of actually working a program. And I immersed myself back into recovery. And it was not easy.
No.
Believe me. But I had to set my pride aside and actually, ask for help, and saying, look, I need help here. And I can't do this on my own. I said, I used to get to meetings and then nothing would stop me, where, I know where people say, come into a recovery process and saying, what do I need to do? And for me is that I was willing to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had that brokenness and, saying, and then knowing from the innermost self, I can't think my way out of this. Okay. And I need help. And my best thinking has got me into that trouble in the first place. And I can't rely on my thinking. And so it's really about taking, suggestions from others, immersing myself back into a 12-step program. And, going through the program. And the program is designed really for one to actually have a spiritual awakening. It forces it to happen.
It's essential.
Absolutely, and it, a spiritual awakening, it would be a psychic shift, maybe, personality change, different new sets of morals and principles starts becoming the guiding force, and relying, on a power greater than myself. I call it God. I just simplified that.
I don't mind what you call it.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's in the spiritual aspect. It's tapping into a power greater than myself, and I find that a lot of people who go into recovery programs struggle on the concept of, the idea of God or the conception of God, or what it means to them. I get it. I understand.
I was like that.
Yeah. I spent a long time playing God.
Yeah.
So to have somebody, a power greater than me, to actually start running my life. Well, that's a foreign concept, However, I've got over. Literature's in all aspects. You take it. But the one I really like is, when people started to come and help me, when I was desperate.
Yeah.
I saw the inner workings of the human heart. Yeah. That doesn't mean I'm gonna have some magic light come through, but the way people were coming and assisting and helping me, that was pure love. And in literature, the client says, deep down in every man, woman, and child, there's a fundamental idea of God, and I see that, working, the kindness of others, how they're willing to come and drop what they are doing. That just answers it all for me, And by going through the entire process of recovery again, and, you know, I have been tapped into a power greater myself, you know, where I rely on how I function, you know, on a daily basis. And I've had to change. And I've had to change from my old ideas to new ideas. You know, my old ideas don't work. You know? And it, you know, and it's not been easy. You know, trying to function, you know, in the world with, you know, the amputations and how I kind of, you know, get around has taken time. You know, many times I was ready to beat my head on the wall. However, you know, just having hope, you know, that things are going to be okay, you know, and actually just chipping away at things and trusting in this entire process. You know, my life has absolutely 100% been transformed. There's no doubt about that, you know. It's not from the external world, you know, it's what's going on in the internal aspect of me. You know, I was always a broken man on the inside. You know, I had layers and barriers all around me, you know, where I was just blocking myself. You know, I wouldn't allow others to see what was really going on. You know, if you turn around and said to me, Pax, how you doing? I used to say, everything's great and wonderful. You know? You know, it was an outright lie at that point.
I'm doing great.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's just that kind of thing. I just, you know, I want you to see me that everything's okay. I've got to keep the external okay.
Yeah.
You know, well, being a bilateral amputee, it's very difficult to keep the external okay. You know, so, you know, the brokenness was all there. But as I said, the journey of recovery I've healed from the inside out as I always needed to be, you know, and it's breaking away those layers one by one, you know, and my journey's growing, but my journey's growing on a spiritual plane rather than a materialistic plane these days, you know, and I know, I completely understand and know from my heart, you know, is that when I'm spiritually connected, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, I don't act the way I used to act. I don't behave the way I used to behave. You know, I've got several tools that's provided to me on, you know, that I'm able to tap into and use to kind of align
also
myself.
The thought process. I've noticed that my own thought process in recovery, when I'm doing the stuff that I'm meant to be doing, it's completely different. It's like what can I bring to the situation rather than what can I take?
Yeah. Absolutely. And also, I still need a sponsor or someone who I tap into regularly because I've got an ego.
So what if, you know, you're having a bad day and humility and turning to a higher power is proving to be quite hard? What would you do in that situation?
I would divert myself to help another person completely. I have to get out of my own way myself. You know, the problem becomes my self-reliance, you know, my kind of ability within my mind that's going to be driving, and I really have to get out of myself. And the best way, you know, and all the 12-step programs of recovery aspect is the altruistic aspect, which is go help another alcoholic or addict, or, you know, help somebody else who's in need. You know, and by doing that, it's simply kind of tapping into one of the set of the tools.
So yeah, like getting out of it used to be getting out of it, but now getting out of it is getting out of self.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's getting out of my way. However, I still need a sponsor because, you know, my initial thought, my thinking process would be, forget it. I don't want to face the world. I don't want to meet anybody else and just sit there on my own and my own thinking processes. You know, now I can have great knowledge about recovery, but when it comes to those moments where I need to apply those tools, it will not come into my forefront on my consciousness. It's why I need a sponsor who will remind me and say, go and help somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, my mind will always say, no, I don't want to go and ring somebody else, okay, but I need to.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually take that, you know, guidance, you know, and strong suggestions, right? It's coming from a very loving place, and the answer does lie there.
Yeah.
You know, so it's actually, you know, dropping my own ego.
Good.
And having humility.
Humility, yes. That was one of the first questions my sponsor asked me. She's like, you find out what humility means and call me back. Okay, one more question. Like, what are you up to at the moment? Like, what's your hopes for the future? Do you have any plans? What's going on?
As I said, my world has completely changed now, where once my driving force used to be money, success, you know, all the externals. And actually, by coming into recovery and actually being, you know, the way I like to look at this is I've been gracefully broken down, right? And I need to be broken down, okay? Because I've created all these barriers and images of who I am, right? Of what other people needed me to be, is that I've actually broken down to become the true person I've always intended to be, you know? And I like to call it gracefully because, you know, I've been watched, I've been looked after, I've been blessed.
Yeah.
You know, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, my whole kind of perception has completely changed of what life's really about. And I'm driven to doing a lot more altruistic work, but in different forms.
Okay.
You know, I know recovery, the stigma about addictions and alcoholism, you know, is still there.
Yeah.
You know, where there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of misconceptions of what the illness is really about, and it's actually to go more into and start doing a lot more awareness and breaking down, you know, the fear and the stigma, and, you know, just say there is support available.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't need to be ashamed of it because it's not moral. It's, you know, I have an illness that I didn't know that I had an illness.
Yeah.
You know, and I have illness which senses my mind. My mind's actually telling me it's okay to go and do it.
Despite everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, I'm driven into a different way. So as I said, you know, I try to live one day at a time. I don't have expectations, even though my mind will love to
Future tripping, yes.
Absolutely. It's just that it's really about, you know, I'm guided towards, you know, helping others a lot more.
It just feels right, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it kind of aligns with me spiritually. You know, I was never able to kind of talk and communicate the way I'm communicating. You know, this is.
I've only known you like this, so that's really hard for me to imagine. But no, I hear you because I was different.
Yeah, you know, so it's that kind of thing that, you know, I have no shame attached to my illness. I accept it fully.
Yeah.
Know? And, you know, I have no issues with, you know, trying to talk to people.
Yeah.
You know, I've had way too many spiritual experiences along my journey. I mean, that's another story itself.
Well, next time you come.
kind of show that, you know, doing the right thing is always the best thing.
And it leads to the next best thing as well.
Yeah.
And so, listen, that is a really positive note to end on. Thank you so much, Pax. It was a pleasure. Love you lots.
Love you too. Thank you. Thank you. It's been great to be a part of this project. Thanks.
Thanks.